On my finger.
There's a little bit of a delay before it comes up.
And then it should come up on this page, right?
Yeah, it should come up there.
Because I'm back here, so
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think my tripod's going to work. I got a new phone and it doesn't like it landscaping.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'll just have to do it, hold it.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know, is this mine? Can you give me your phone? Yeah. Can you hear me with this? Yes? Okay. We've got just about a minute, so if everyone will come in and take a seat, we'll get started. I know that you all have a lot of questions you'd like to pose to our legislators, and we want to make space for as many of those as possible today. Our Western session. You ready? All right, good morning. I'm Corey Cantrell, and I would like to welcome all of you to the first of our 2024 legislative town halls. These are brought to you each year by the League of Women Voters. And here to start us off is Carolyn Goodwin, one of our co-presidents this year from League of Women Voters. And she has a statement she would like to read for you.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for being here. My husband was ready to tell me we should cancel this, and I'm stubborn. I'm a Texan too. So I said, well, I'm going to go outside, and I'll walk the driveway, and I'll walk the street. All was okay. So thank y'all for saying it was okay. And I thank the legislators. Some of you have tried the furthest to come. Senator Lons and Representative Carlson. The others of you, a little closer to here. So thank you. To have 5 of you here on this day with the weather and all, we say a big thank you. And I'm going to use my Texas roots here to kind of do an introduction that is as much a reminder to me as to each of you. Some of you may not know or have heard of SMU, Southern Memphis University in Dallas, Texas. Special place. I graduated from SMU, met my husband there. A few years ago, SMU gave permission for President George W. Bush to build his presidential library on campus. As an educator, I had some concerns about that, but I was glad and I eat my concerns. It's a beautiful library. I've been to several presidential libraries. I urge you, if you're ever in Dallas, to visit the library. And I think what I'm most impressed by with President Bush and Laura, and by the way, Laura Bush was in my class at SMU. Never knew who she was, but she was at SMU at the same time. They have done a wonderful job, and they have some wonderful programs. And I'm going to share from a program they just hosted at the Presidential Library. And it involved 2 governors. And I'm not going to deal with names because I would probably not get them straight throughout what I'm going to share. But it was the governor of Utah, male, who is a Republican, and in the best of League of Women Voters fashion, the governor of Kansas, a female, who is a Democrat. And in their presentation, talking about how they want to dialogue with one another as governors, they made 5 key statements that are important for us to remember today, and for legislators, the electorate, and nicely for students who are here. First of all, they, and this was from the governor of Utah, said, don't make false assumptions. Affecting polarization is when one party negatively assumes the opposing party is the antithesis of what the initial party deems to be logical. The median Democrat and median Republican are not too far from one another. Second point, find common ground. And that's what the legislature is about. It's what we're about in the League of Women Voters. And Governor of Kansas said, I remind you that you always find one nugget of common ground, and you can build so much on just one thing. Then, don't make blanket statements. Making negative political statements represent a whole group and isn't productive. And that's from the governor of Utah. Then, take a break from the, and I hope this was a typo, convos going nowhere. That could be convoys, it could be converts, whatever you might choose. But everyone encounters extremists, and this is from the governor of Kansas, from both political parties. And when we encounter those who are unwilling to listen with civility, and that's what I ask of you today, there really isn't a whole lot of reason to have conversations. And that's from the governor of Kansas. And finally, address the ideas, not the individual. And this is from the governor of Utah. Look, I'm not going to attack you as an individual. That's deeply important in preserving everything that has made our country great. So you've had your lecture from the old history teacher, my favorite counselor. And I'm going to turn it over to my very seasoned veteran, who is a speech teacher, so I get my grade at the end of the event. So, Corey Cantrell.
Yes, well, part of the purpose of the League of Women Voters is to educate voters so that we can participate in the democratic process. And it is for that reason that we hold these town halls every year. We invite our legislators to come, and we invite you, the public, to come and answer questions. Today we are co-hosted by Siouxland Cares, and here to tell us a little bit about that organization is their executive director, Rachel Lundgren.
Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Carolyn. My name is Rachel Lundgren, and I'm the director of Siouxland Cares. I'll keep it brief because I know you're here to hear from our legislators today. But if anyone's ever interested in knowing what we do, we're a prevention agency here in Siouxland. We do a lot of work about prevention of substance misuse, bullying. Recently, we started to work with sexual assault prevention and information. So we're doing a lot of different things in that area. One thing you might know Siouxland Cares for is the Mayor's Youth Commission. We oversee them, and we have some wonderful young people here in the front today from our Mayor's Youth Commission who are timing for the legislators. One other thing I wanted to make sure we shared is that we also work with Source for Siouxland, which is an organization that just has a bunch of different nonprofits and businesses in the area that put data together to look at gaps. So the legislators, you might be interested in this, or anyone in the audience, if you go to sourceforsiouxland.com, you can find a lot of data about our area, which is great when you want to come and ask questions or look up information when you're looking at those. So thank you so much for having us here today. Siouxland Cares is so happy to co-sponsor here with League of Women Voters. And with that, I will turn it back over to Courtney.
Okay, and to introduce our Mary's Youth Commission, they're right here in the front row, and I'm hoping that I got everybody's names right. We got Kayla Von Hayden from East, CJ Roney from Heelan, Isla Fries from Heelan, and Ireland Photo. They will be keeping time for you guys so that you guys can stay on track. We never have trouble with people. All right, and introducing our legislatures. We have Senator Kevin Alonz, Representative J.D. Scholten, Representative Bob Henderson, Representative Ken Carlson, and down on the end, Jacob Bossman. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We appreciate your coming to answer questions. We invite you as the audience. You may either ask your questions here, or we do have someone monitoring our Facebook feed. So we will be taking questions from there, and Bernie Scalero back in the back is monitoring the Facebook feed, and I will call on him periodically to ask questions from there. Gentlemen, I know you've been in session now for what, 3, almost 4 weeks? So could you please, we're just going to go straight down the line here, and if you could please tell us what your legislative goals are for the year, and then we'll get started with questions.
Kevin Alonz, Senate from District 7, so I've got most of Woodbury, Altoona, not part of Plymouth, part of Cherokee. I'll just quick go down the committees I'm on, and then I'll talk about a couple things I'm working on. So I'm on appropriations, I'm on technology, agriculture, Veterans Affairs, let's see, get this out of order. Anyway, it'll come to me. I'll get back to the last one. I'm on 5 committees. I'm also on international relations, human HHS. So it's my committee. So, the one thing I've been advocating for, actually, it's kind of a broader topic, but I think it really kind of is coming to highlight with what's happening what's happening at the national scale right now, where we have a federal government that seems to be at odds with the state increasingly, and what they're doing with our currency, etc. I've been arguing, really advocating for, and I've got a bill in place that would establish a gold-backed transactional currency for the state of Iowa. And I think that's something that I would basically give an alternative to what I think is really coming on across the country and beyond. And it's stripping, or basically it's causing the inflation that we're living with. And anyway, I've got it's a really simple system, but I can take a little more time to explain it later, but I can go through the list. But that's one thing I'm working on. Another thing I'm working on is a couple of election integrity issues. And I'm also trying to, the other one is human development. It's basically adding some small requirements to human development to really highlight the humanity of life. So right now, we've had such a divide on life, abortion. This would be basically, with all the advances we've seen in technology and highlighting the humanity of human life, putting a little bit in our curriculum to just remind children as they're growing up just how the obvious nature of humans from almost the point of conception. And there's some animation and some new advances in that I think that should be covered. So that's something I'm advocating for. The last thing I'm working on is trying to get some more data for the effects of vaccines in our country. I think that as we went through the COVID-19 pandemic, I think that we hear an awful lot of claims but very little data. So that's something that I'm advocating for as well. And also just working on health and human services topics. Obviously we've heard so much this last year about mental health, and really trying to participate in that process and figure out ways to help. There's a few bills that I know that are coming through the Senate that I'm going to try to help support that would maybe bring some relief to that.
All right. First, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us. I'll be very honest that I was upset about the education forum getting canceled. And I appreciate everybody here showing up because I know how busy things can get during the legislative session. I'm on agriculture, economic development and technology, natural resources, and commerce. Some of the things I'm overseeing the discussions we're having at the legislative session on AI and the impact of that in our society. You'll be hearing this week from, I'm leading an effort in our Democratic House Caucus on protecting taxpayer investments. There'll be something coming out this week. And then the last thing, making sure we protect public education, especially the AEAs.
Good morning, and thank you for all of you for being here this morning. This is a very important time. My name is Bob Henderson. I represent District 2, which is all of Woodbury, not all of Woodbury County, but the entire district is in Woodbury County. It involves basically the northern half of Sioux City and goes east almost to Mobile. So my professional background is in education, specifically public education, so my interests lie there. However, legislators can't just deal with the things that they're interested in, so I have quite a few other things in which I also have. I serve on the Transportation Committee, on the Public Safety Committee, on the Local Government Committee, and then I serve in the Education Appropriations Subcommittee as well. And my main interests, as you can well imagine, have to do with education. And but there's quite a few other things. We actually passed quite a few bills in those other committees that I was that I mentioned this week. They all passed unanimously, and they will probably be on the floor this week. They had to do with things like private information on car registrations, to information about transportation issues, all kinds of things that are a lot of times just maintenance issues. They bring things up to date. For example, we had to, in public safety, we have to do a bill almost every year to update the chemical substances that are listed for the law in regard to drugs, both legal and illegal drugs, because that's the way the code is written. It has to do with chemical manufacturing and the chemical makeup of them. So that would be it.
Morning, Ken Carlson, District 13 representative, and that's all of Winona County, most of the rural Woodbury County area, Plymouth County from Lamar South, and Cherokee County from Cherokee South is my area. Retired farmer with 12 years of teaching school experience. I'm on 4 committees at the House. I'm on Ag, Technology, Natural Resources, and Veterans Affairs. The question was asked what some of my goals are. Goal number 1 is to survive. Second one that I've been working on is with Cherokee County Sheriff and their problems, if you can put it that way, with regards to the program called CUSO, which is bringing sexually violent individuals into the facility in Cherokee and the problems that they're having. So we're working on that one. I'm also a part of one with regards to the county assessor lawsuits that have been coming out and around because of FOIA requests by a organization in Missouri. It has cost, as just an example, the county of Winona $25,000 to get this guy off their back, and there have been several other counties who have had to deal with this man as well. So we're trying to get that under control. I'm also have signed on to a bill that was presented that would require, and I think this is extremely important, that the Holocaust be taught in our public schools. The ignorance that is out there. So I have signed on to that bill, working to get that through the legislature. And the last one is a novel approach. I will share this statistic with you. In 2022, there were a little over 3,000 abortions in the state of Iowa. This is not an abortion debate. This is just, that's the fact. And of those over 3,000, 82% of them, 82% now, were single women who had abortions. Now, I will grant that there were probably, according to the Guttmacher Institute, there's probably at least 5% of those that were related to health of the mother or incest or rape. But all of the rest of them, you got to point at something else as to what that is. Why so many single women are getting abortions. The common theme that I have heard is that the man gets her pregnant and he disappears, and the woman is left to fend for herself. So I have signed on to a bill that has been presented that is going to change our child support laws so that the child support laws begin at conception, so that that man who impregnates that woman is going to have a financial stake in that child. I can see everybody standing up and cheering for that one. But I think it is something that we need to address. So I'll just leave it at that. I can throw some more comments about that one. So that's what I'm working on. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, good morning. I'm State Representative Jacob Bossman. I represent House District 14, which is the Morningside area of Sioux City, Sergeant Bluff, Salix, a little bit more of rural Woodbury County. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, State Government, Labor Committee, and I'm the chair of the Transportation, Infrastructure, and Capitals Budget Subcommittee, where we craft the transportation budgets and the infrastructure budget. The main area that I have been hearing about the last couple of years, primarily as we talk about workforce and barriers to employment, has been affordable housing. We have an area, an issue, I think, in Sioux City and across the state where the free market just isn't working, where you have this demand for example, in the Sioux City area, $150,000 to $250,000 houses. The volume just doesn't exist for what is needed, and the minimum construction cost is about $300,000 with inflation and increasing costs of materials. So there literally is no way to create more of that supply that is needed. So the workforce housing tax credit has been very successful at the state level. I just introduced a bill to increase that from 35 million to 50 million. So I think that would be helpful. Also, I had noticed that you have some of the larger cities that were getting kind of a disproportionate amount of that money. I think last year Cedar Rapids got $4 million, Sioux City got $1 million, and a lot of the other smaller smaller cities, Waterloo and Council Bluffs and Butte, kind of a similar situation, being less than $1 million. So I introduced a bill saying that the two largest counties couldn't receive more than a third of that, to hopefully balance that out and get a little bit more of that money coming to Sioux City and some of those areas where it's harder for those developments to happen on their own. Also, kind of in that vein of trying to focus on ways to keep those new construction costs down, there's been an idea floated around for a long time, and Nebraska does it, a lot of other states have land banks, what they call land redevelopment trusts. So I introduced a bill to allow those in Iowa, that hopefully that would be a mechanism where the city would create that trust, or the local government would, and they would be a nonprofit that could take donations, they could get government grants, and hopefully use some of that money to redevelop blighted areas, potentially give away lots or sell them at low cost, those type of things to make that initial construction cost lower and get down into that affordable area, that $150,000 to $250,000 range, or perhaps even lower, that is needed by our residents. And that really, I've seen, has been the number one, along with childcare, kind of impediment to filling a lot of these positions, recruiting people to move to this area. So that's what I'm trying to focus on.
Thank you all very much. We now invite you all to come line up here at the mic. We moved it so that we could get it onto our Facebook Live page, and we will take as many questions as we have time for. Gentlemen, we ask you to keep your answers to 90 seconds.
Carolyn Goodwin, Legal and Voters. I'm going to take a moment of privilege. Trayla Lee from the school board asked that she could come up and make a statement. See if you're on. The teacher tries to talk loud without a microphone too.
There we go.
Thank you.
President Jan George is here, but I did see you, my apologies. But I just want to thank all of those that showed up for the educational forum this morning and did not get the notice that it was canceled. Please know that we understand the intention of having that forum, but we want to just apologize. I want to apologize on behalf of the board that it got canceled and you were not notified and you showed up at the wee hours on a Saturday morning to be there. So thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you all for being here today for this forum.
And now I'll take privilege. My question, or I would ask your response, the League of Women Voters has always worked hard to register new voters, to get information out to the electorate by events like this, by candidate forums, and next fall we'll be hosting, we hope, county and state forums for you as candidates if you choose to run again, and we'll be in contact with you. But I would like to simply make a statement. We are very concerned about the safety of election workers. Several of our members are election workers. I've always said I should do that and have not, so shame on me. Maybe I'll still do it. I would ask you each to say what your concerns are and what is perhaps happening. We had heard that perhaps there would be a bipartisan bill to protect election workers. And maybe that's an election worker comment. But anyway, so Corey, I'll let you take over and answer in which you want them to answer. So thank you.
Who wants to go first? Any news of a bill about protecting election workers?
I'll take the easiest question. There's nothing that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I would certainly second that. I haven't heard of any bill that's, or any discussion. Chris, we're involved in other things right now, but I guess I would say that it would occur to me that probably is something that you ought to be discussing with either the city police for precinct protection, or certainly the county sheriff's department. I don't think there's any question that security and safety is important, and so I would that might be the easiest route. I don't know if that needs legislation so much as it just simply needs to be addressed.
I was just saying, I think one of the most important part of our democracy is having it strong, so no matter who's in charge, we can have healthy, fair elections, and anything we can do to progress that, and whether it's safety, whether it's making sure more people are eligible to vote and just engaged in the process. I think that's one thing I'm worried about here in Sioux City is, I mean, we're a town of 85,000 people, and according to what the school board elections were, there's only 27,000 registered to vote. And you look around, and I appreciate the efforts of the League of Women Voters, and you look around this room, and then you go to the mall, it's a different, there's a lot more diversity. And so any way we can get more people involved to have their voices be heard, I think that would be good for Iowa, good for Sioux City, and good for this country.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a bill either. I really think we do, I agree, we need to focus and make sure that we have integrity in our system and that every vote does count. But as far as specifically for security of workers, I'm not aware of that. So.
Yeah, I'll essentially echo what everybody else has said, is that this is the first I'm hearing of the issue. Obviously, I would support addressing that need if it's there. Obviously, we can't stand for any sort of attempts to use violence or intimidation to unfairly influence the elections or keep people from voting. So that is something that obviously needs to be a priority, and that comes up. We're beyond the point of introducing bills, but there's still other opportunities for leadership bills or committee bills. So yeah, there could be a bill out there, and we'll look into that, and I obviously would support it if there's a need for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a real quick question though for you, Carolyn.
Sure.
Are you talking about physical safety at the
Yes.
voting precincts?
Yes.
You're not talking about voting integrity, are you?
No.
Okay.
About
I
the
just want to
safety.
make sure that.
Thank you, Bob, for
Yeah.
clarifying.
Yeah.
William Burrows, 4409 47th Street, Sioux City. Got a question for the two gentlemen that are on the Veterans Affairs Committees. What are you doing for the vets this year, as far as legislation?
Let's see. One thing that just went through the Senate was basically they're looking at changing the definition kind of realigning or aligning the definition of a veteran in Iowa with federal code. So right now, there's a couple limitations for like time of service, and I forget the specifics, but basically would broaden the definition of a veteran slightly. So that would affect some people. I'm trying to think of obviously there was a big change that happened last year, was appropriation for the Veterans Support Fund that is ongoing. There's a couple more discussions that would have some financial impact that way. And I'm trying to think of
It's only 500,000, right?
What's that?
Oh, it's only 500,000, right?
The amount in that fund per year?
Yeah.
Actually, well, the amount of money that is raised from that fund, so basically the interest on the second, it's almost like an endowment. So that interest, for the money that as it's invested, it went up like 4 times. So now I think the money it went up substantially, 4 or 5 times. So that was a state fund that really increased in value. That was a decision for a change that happened last year.
I would respond in this way. We're making sure that the money's going to be there. We are making sure that money gets to the county VA officers so that they can do their job more efficiently, involve more individuals that need to be covered or taken care of. We have also talked about homelessness and how we can deal with homelessness in a better way than what we have been. We are also working on, let me back up. We had the commandant there just this last week, and he shared his insights. So really, we're just getting started on putting things together to help the veterans, to make things better for them. So based on what he shared with us. I guess one thing that we have been working on, which may seem silly or not important, but for disabled veterans, we want to allow them to go out and use a crossbow to go hunting. That means they seem to be irrelevant, but they need to be a part of it. So we're aware, and we're working to improve in every area that we possibly can.
One quick follow-up on the environment. We've got 3 million people, 22 million hogs, billions of chickens. What's being done in the legislature to clean up the water in Iowa? Thank you.
Who's on an appropriate committee for environmental concerns?
I mean, both natural resources and agriculture I'm on, and to be honest, not much.
Okay.
I don't know if I can speak to new initiatives, but when I was first elected, the first bill I voted on was the Clean Water Bill. And I know the budget that I chair now, the Transportation Infrastructure and Capitals, there are 2 large funds of money, I think over 50 or 60 million that go toward water quality. A lot of that goes into the agriculture budget for mitigation and runoff prevention programs and those type of things. So I know in the state there are a lot of programs primarily administered through IDALs to accomplish exactly that. I would say yes, we probably have a lot of work to do, but there is a lot being done by the state currently.
Bernie Scalero, good to see you all. It's really nice to see you, 5 of you here, so thank you. I have a question actually on House File 2082. It's a subcommittee's hearing's been scheduled. House File 2082 would remove gender identity protections from the Civil Rights Law and add gender dysphoria or any condition related to a gender identity disorder to the definition of a disability that would be protected under the law. So my question today is just really, I want to hear everybody's opinion about what they think about House File 2082.
Who'd like to go first?
I haven't actually read the bill, but I understand the concept as you described, and I believe that, so obviously the fact that gender identity, sexual orientation, but specifically we're talking about gender identity, was added to the Civil Rights Code in Iowa, which is exceptional. We're not the only state, but we're one of just a few, and it's not federal. That happened in 2007, so that's a fairly recent development. And I guess the way the bill stands, I believe that there is some merit for the bill, and I think that this idea, what we're seeing today is gender is turned into something that is so independent and separate from biology, right? So biology, nature's God, and biology describe, and it's obvious, right, how that works. How it is, there's clearly seems to be a design there, and where we've gone to is, somebody brought, as part of this discussion, a chart that shows a flow chart of, I don't know, 100 plus genders. I find that to be an unworkable and a system that just, I don't want to say that I can stand. It's destructive to society. So I think this topic really does need to be revisited. And again, I'm not going to read the bill, but fun concept, I would be in support.
I would say I'm disappointed in the amount of energy spent on focusing on, especially when it comes to kids, their genitalia at the legislative session, especially when it comes to stuff like this where we're taking away rights from people. I think that's the wrong direction we're having in the state of Iowa, and so I have not read the bill yet, and it's one of those that I think it's just disappointing when we take away people's rights.
Sorry, I was just going to say, well, I'm open to all discussions on all issues, and obviously that's how democracy works. At this time, I'm very hesitant to make any changes to the Civil Rights Code. I know that this is a touchy subject, but I think that it's been working well for the last 17 years. So obviously, I think when we're talking about changing the Civil Rights Code, that's something that we need to take a lot of time and serious thought before changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually read the bill, and I can't say that I have all the details worked out in my mind, but I believe what this does, and I'm in favor of it for this reason, is that it moves the issue of transgenderism into the area of disability, so that transgender situations are still protected. They're still protected, but they're under that. Now, the reasoning for that is because it seems to me that the civil rights law that protects different things ought to be protecting, how would I say, non-decision-making situations. Decision-making situations in one is, that's one thing, but other kinds of disabilities should be considered into a category. Otherwise, the civil rights bill, the civil rights laws can just get, very, very cumbersome. So I think that would be a main reason that I'd be in favor of it.
I have not seen the bill, so I can't comment particularly on what it says, but I am of a mind and have been somewhat leery of this from day one. I think we're up to 15 or 16 different groups of people now that we cannot discriminate against. I forget how big the number is. But I am of a mind we need to get rid of all of them and write it simply as you cannot discriminate against a human being. And then you don't have to worry about who belongs on it, who does not belong on it.
Thank you. And Bernie, did you have anything from the Facebook at this point?
I have one. Do you want me to do it now?
Yeah, go ahead since you're here.
It was sent previously, and it's from Renee Weinberg, and it was she wanted an update basically on school vouchers and how that has worked this year, and how many counties in Iowa are lacking in a private school for these students to attend, and she wasn't understanding where that money would go then. So just maybe an update on the bill and how it's worked this year.
I'll respond this way. I think it is, number one, they are ESAs. It's not a voucher. We got to get off of that word. Number two, I have had several superintendents say to me, this has been good for us because it's forcing us to examine what we have and have not been doing in our schools to make it good for everybody. So I am pleased with the results.
I'll simply say that in Iowa, we've always funded education, especially the state supplemental aid, on a per pupil basis. Larger school like Sioux City receives more money, obviously than a smaller school like Sergeant Bluff. And so this continues that where if students leave and go to a private school, that money is following them. So I think it's working exactly as intended, that $7,400 is following the student the same way that open enrollment did. So obviously there were some students, I think, that left Sioux City Public and Sergeant Bluff and went to private schools. And those schools are continuing to be funded based on the amount of students that they are educating. So I haven't heard any negatives in that regard. And I think as it continues to open up next year, you'll see probably a little bit more of that, or a little bit more money maybe going to the public schools. But I think it's being implemented as it was intended.
Yeah, I would echo what Representative Carlson just said. In fact, I just had a conversation with a Board of Education member just yesterday who indicated that they felt this was going to have a lot of positive things happening for public schools. They said almost immediately when that bill was passed, their Board of Education entered into discussions about how to improve school discipline, what to do. And they put into effect things that they believe already has really improved their schools, and because it is a matter of competition. I'm not sure that's a good word all the time, but it does have that effect. Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, first, we're over budget. There's no audit or reporting system on this. This is the most fiscally irresponsible bill ever to pass in the state of Iowa that I feel. It's going to be on pace to be 400% over budget. We've added this earlier this month. I don't know how it came out, but charter schools decided to come or applied at the Department of Education. 7 of those are out of state. So if you look at success as giving taxpayer money to private institutions that are out of state, this bill did pretty well, I guess, on that end.
Well, the topics generally we covered, but the question was kind of how has it gone so far? And so I think the projection was like 10,000 scholarships would be awarded or would be applied for and would be available or used, I guess. And I think the number were higher than that, so it did show that there certainly is interest, and parents were wanting to participate in the program. So I think going back to the competitive nature of it and basically giving people choice and then making the system accountable, I would say that is underway. And I think 1 year in, it's going to take some time to really assess, I guess, what effect that's had and how it improves all schools. That's what I would anticipate.
Pat Gill, Woodbury County Auditor. Just to follow up a little bit on what Goodwin was saying, is that for precinct election officials, we really haven't experienced that in Woodbury County. We're lucky that we haven't had to do that, but we are going to handle that through training. The Secretary of State's office has offered that one of their priorities this year is to improve precinct election official training. We are on board with that. We're looking forward to working with them. But security is part of that training. We actually did active shooter training for our precinct election officials, and we'll continue to kind of expand on it. One of the things that is a good thing to be brought up is that it doesn't expand beyond the polling place. Where other jurisdictions nationwide where they have intimidation of poll workers at their homes outside the polling place, that might be something we need to look into. But House Study Bill 591 is one that the Secretary of State's office has put forth, and it has to do with disability, helping folks remotely vote by absentee with technology. And it's about a pilot project, and I've been talking with them for a couple of years about this. And this is the first time legislation's been brought forth. It passed out of the subcommittee 3-0, and that's something I think, and Woodbury County has volunteered to participate in that pilot program. The other thing, I'm not going to go through all the others' initiatives, but one of the things I just want to bring up is that we've been limited to 20 days of early voting now, and it makes it hard for folks to, we're trying to educate folks to that change. But what happens is that we can't mail absentee ballots out until that 20-day period starts. So what happens is a lot of folks, we mail the ballots, but they still come to our satellite voting places in order to vote because they're getting anxious because it's a 20-day period now instead of 40 days that it was. And it just causes a backlog of trying to cancel those ballots. And, you have ballots floating out there, and then plus you have people that have gone to the polling place to vote. So if you could allow us to vote, to mail those 5 days before that 20-day period start, that would be extremely helpful to us. Thank you.
Any anticipated change in the early voting period at this point? No? Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm here about the CO2 hazardous pipelines. There are 3 bills proposed. House Study Bill 608, and that refers to a proceeding, suspending a proceeding, which may or may not affect the IUB hearing at this point. Senate File 2099 has a 90% threshold, damage claims and some other small things, but it doesn't apply to these current pipelines. Senate File 2097 protects county ordinances, a moratorium until PHMSA regulations are issued. Pipelines must be 8 feet deep, and that deals with the tiling. All federal, state, and local permits before the application is granted. All permits in other states before they grant eminent domain. 90% threshold in miles and parcels. They need to release the plume dispersion with their application. They need to have transparency with investors. Section 479B-15 would be repealed, and that has to do with surveys without permission. The bill would be effective retroactive to 7/1 of 21, which would apply to all the pipelines that are presently presented in Iowa. And so these hazardous pipelines affect everyone in the state of Iowa and 4 other states. So my question to you is, will you support Senate File 2097? And if not, why? And would you have another proposal in mind?
I guess I'll go first since you're asking about the Senate file, but I will be in support of those that make it to the floor. They're not going through committees that I will be able to weigh in early on, but I do believe I believe I've co-sponsored at least 1 or 2 of the bills that are going through the Senate. I think that the plume study issue, that basically that really to me is just a safety issue, that there seems to be a unwillingness to talk about really what the dangers are and what the risks are to Iowans that would end up be living close to these pipelines. Obviously, the threshold for everything you said, the demand, I think is really an important part. But yeah, safety I think is a big deal, and I think it needs more attention. So I'm hoping that it's something we'll do, but we'll see.
So I know I'll say there's a lot of bipartisan, well, no, there's a lot of partisan frustration of issues we brought up here and things like this, but this is one thing that doesn't have clear-cut lines. In fact, I'm really appreciative of Representative Carlson and his efforts on a lot of things and informing me on he tends to give me information, which I really appreciate. I think there is this narrative in the agriculture community that without this, the renewable fuel industry will go away, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's other options. There's low carbon fuel standard. There's aviation fuel that we can all talk about more. In my mind, when it comes to carbon sequestration, why it doesn't make sense to me to pump something, a chemical that is poisonous, go through different lands and different places, hundreds of miles away, if not thousands of miles away, when we can empower our farmers to sequester on their land and let's go to the source of it rather than piping it and making all these things that may be obsolete in 15, 20 years and investing in all that. So that's kind of where I'm at, and just overall with, instead of these specific bills, that's just kind of my overall view.
I actually haven't seen those bills, but I know Senator Lawrence and I have talked a lot about the issues, and so I'm inclined to trust what he has done, but I just haven't read the bill yet.
Now, I am on the Ag Committee, and we have not specifically talked about pipelines yet. We're kind of waiting. I'm at least waiting to see what the IUB is going to do. Supposedly all of the presentations to them are done, and they're going to be making a decision sometime. Nobody seems to know when. But I come down on the following. I was one of those who voted against the bill with regard to the first one that came out, and because it had protection on eminent domain. For me, it's 100% or nothing at all, because I believe above all, no matter what it is, property rights are preeminent in our country. It's a part of our freedom to have property rights, and we are at this point misusing terribly eminent domain. So that's where I stand. I did support the 90% threshold, and I would say, and I would say that, contrary to maybe some other members of the House, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm opposed to the project. I support the landowner rights of the property owners that want to have the pipeline come through their property, that want to participate in that project. I just don't think that eminent domain should be able to be used for this project. And I think that there's a differentiation there between being opposed to the project and supporting the project, and being opposed to the use of eminent domain for the project or supporting the use of eminent domain. So I don't think it's necessarily the role of the state legislature to say whether this is a valid business model or something that should happen or not. But I do think that we need to reform eminent domain and redefine what is a public good, what entities can apply for eminent domain, what sort of products and when they can use eminent domain. And I don't think that this is a good use of eminent domain. And that's why I supported the 90% threshold. When it passed out of the House, and it, like a lot of other proposals, have been stalled in the Senate.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Carrie Hall. I first want to address the education forum this morning because I was one of those people who didn't get the memo and showed up. 6:45 in the shower on a Saturday, guys. Can you show up next month if you are available, so I don't go up to an empty building?
Me? I'm sorry. I'm for whatever reason, I'm not on the list to get called and even be notified about it.
Sioux City.
Yeah, it's the Sioux City community school district, so it would only be those of you who represent the Sioux City area.
So if we just put the blame on Representative
You're the only one.
And then I would like to address the ADA. What is your stance on that? Where is it at? Can you give us any updates on the amendments?
Yeah, I've had a lot of time on that bill for the last 2 weeks. In fact, I have had the benefit, I suppose, of spending about 8.5 hours with a former employee of the ADA. I live with her. But I've had conversations with lots of other people, both some of the chiefs, some of the lots of correspondence with superintendents, I guess the best I can tell you about things right now is that bill is still in morph. In fact, I understand we just got the bill, it just dropped. I haven't actually read it, but I did read the overview of the bill, which is pretty important to do. The overview of the amendment to the bill. And the amendment is almost a strike amendment, I believe, and that is it just simply replaces the bill. And I'll tell you the bottom line on it, the very last statement on this amendment is, we anticipate that most schools will make minimal changes at the most in the first year. So, one of the important things to know is that the intent of this bill is to provide better and better measurable support for our special needs students. As part of it is to start to eliminate...
I'm sorry, but your time is over.
Okay. You're welcome to talk to me more about it. I've got a lot of information given to me. I've got meetings with people coming up Monday who can give me even more information directly about it.
Could you answer this though? Is that amendment, is that public yet?
I don't know the answer to that. I just know that I think I got it on the email. I just haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, and if we could please silence the phones. Thank you.
Yeah, like we said, I think there's still a little ambiguity about exactly what the amendment looks like. We can speak sort of conceptually, but I will say that
I believe this is the legislative process working. You know, the governor, in her condition of the state, you know, proposed some changes to the AEA. That was the first time some of us had heard of that. You know, we've had a lot of discussions with our constituents. The governor's had a lot of discussions with legislators. The fact that she's changing her proposal and you know, crafting an amendment to this so soon, I think shows that that process is working, that she is hearing from Iowans, that we're hearing from Iowans. So I think there's an intent to provide you know, a little more oversight of the funds, to give some more flexibility to the local school districts to direct where those funds are going. I think that those are good discussions to be had, as long as we're ensuring that those services are still being provided. So we're going to continue those discussions.
I guess my perspective is that the bill really had an aggressive timeline as it was presented, and I think that time frame is gone, and I think frankly it's just too aggressive and potentially too disruptive. So I think that I've had some good discussions. I'm not on education, but I've had some good discussions with other senators that are more involved in the actual discussions and debate, and they see there's reason, there's some things that need to be changed, obviously. So there's metrics that are being cited, and I think there is a good body of data that we can do better. We can do a better job of delivery for special needs students. So I think the objective is good. I think that what will ultimately come out of it will be positive. I don't think it's going to happen nearly as fast as people have feared at the beginning, and maybe the way it was presented.
Do you think it will happen this legislative session?
I don't know. That's a good point. I really couldn't say for sure. It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think.
Can you let us know as soon as you do?
Sure.
It's hard to say not knowing what that would look like, but I would be very surprised if we didn't do something to address it.
I would like to give the Democratic perspective.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, we heard nothing. We heard rumors. We saw nothing, and then the condition of the state by the governor the first week of the legislative session, and then the next day, 124-page bill, massive bill. So out of nowhere, 124-page. We've received over 800, at least I have received over 800 emails on this. 0 are in support of this bill. So it shows you the popularity of this bill. The governor has, in their condition of the state, said we should have an overall or a general review. I think everyone's up to it. I've talked with Dr. Cox on this, and he's in favor of this. I think the governor should be talking to AEAs and what we should do to improve the situation, not a corporate consultant out of Virginia. Ultimately, I think that's what it is. This is not an Iowa thing. This is not Iowans asking for this. This is the governor working with her corporate consultant, and that's, like, I've been impacted by the AEAs in my educational growing up. And so it's just disheartening to see what's going through, and just, I think this bill is absolutely awful. The timeline was awful, so, I mean, it's somewhat of an improvement, but, I mean, we're still talking about up to 1,000 people getting fired. We're talking about students being impacted. We're talking about parents being impacted on this. And just to rush a bill, I'm not in favor of this bill. And I'm eager to see what the next round of it is.
Thank you. Mr. Waters, go ahead and ask the question.
No. So Alex Waters coming here, wearing a couple of my multiple hats. First as a city council member, but then also as a private citizen. And I just want to thank you all for being here to have this discussion and dialogue, because I really do believe how important this can be to hear from your constituents. First thing that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if any of these are questions, more just to bring it to the top of your mind. If you could help me follow it, or if you have any updates, I would welcome to hear those. The first one was one that was brought to you when we had our city discussion about bills that are impacting the city overall. And that was, again, just that House File 718. It is very complex. I would urge people, I wrote an article that will appear in Expand magazine coming out here soon. It was formerly Siouxland magazine, so you can read more about it. But really, it's just limiting our ability to utilize tax money and revenue that would be coming to the city, and instead will be going to the state and be redirected. It's just really saying that it's no longer whatever your growth is the revenue that comes into your city to be able to support those services. so our finance director calculated a lot of that, and if it would have been applied to this year's budget, we would have actually lost out on $603,000 that really pays for things such as police officers, firefighters, parks and recreation projects, things that people need and the people of Sioux City are asking for. And so when we have to make difficult budget decisions and we have to cut firefighters or police officers, they're going to be calling all of us and not you. And I just worry the projections that our finance director has is over the next 5 years, we're projected to lose an estimated, depending on which growth structure we would fit into, is either $10.8 to $11.4 million of tax revenue that otherwise would allow us those funds to really support and balance our budgets. And I think we're trying to be good stewards. We would just ask that we have enough money to support our growth or hopeful growth. The second thing that I wanted to bring to your attention and ask your support of, again wearing private citizen hat, is the Work Without Worry bill, and that's in the HHS committee right now. This is something I've talked to a number of you about in the past. This is the first time I believe that a bill has actually been introduced. But really what it's focusing on are people with disabilities that want to get into competitive integrated employment and not be limited in doing so. Ever since I got a job and really was getting off of a number of my services, I've been limited on the assets I can own, you know, like the vehicle I can own, the home I can own, but also the income that I can have. And Jacob, I know you worked extensively on the child care issue, and you saw the exact same thing. It's a cliff effect. So the second you make $5 more than what that limit is, that income is, you lose all benefits. And it just hinders people's ability to want to work. And that's what we're seeing in the disability community. We have workforce issues. I know people with disabilities all the time that I've had to turn down raises because I need to keep those benefits in order just to get out of bed in the morning. And so this bill actually would do 3 different things. It would change around the age limit so you no longer are kicked off after 65. It would increase the income limit to where I could make, from right now the limit is a net of $37,000 a year. And it's like I'm working really hard and I would love to make more money, and it's just going to pay more taxes to the state overall. And the third thing that it would do is it would adjust that asset limit, which in addition to allowing me to, I don't know, buy a different house or maybe another vehicle in case mine were to break down, it also would open the door for people with disabilities to get married. Because at this point in time, if I would ever get married, her income would actually count towards my benefits and I would lose all assistance. So I would ask for your assistance with passing things like this because it brings in more tax revenue. It allows people with disabilities more freedom to work and really feel inspired to achieve their full potential. And so I know it's in HHS right now. I believe Representative Turek is working on it, and I think it was introduced by a Republican, but I forget his name too. So I would just ask your support of those things. And actually, last point of privilege, I think it's awesome that we have Mayor's Youth Commission here, and I'm really excited to see Siouxland Cares represented. The last thing I would say is I listened to all of your priorities for this session, and I think that sometimes we get really bogged down on what the hot topics of the day are and think that we need to address them and really urge those bills. The one thing that when I ran for city council was I wanted to recruit and retain more people in our community. People that are my age, younger people, getting them inspired to want to live in Sioux City and in our community. And some of the bills we're passing and things we're forcing are doing nothing but hurting us. And I'm hearing so many people leaving because of them. And I would just really encourage us, rather than the people that are voting you in, I want you to also think about the future and what that demographic looks like and how we can recruit and retain more people to Iowa. The good news is,
any of you want to comment on any of those things? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to disability rights, don't completely understand around the scope of things. I think there's a lot of things in the legislation that we try to do things right, but then ultimately we have issues, especially with the cliff effect on a lot of different areas. So thank you, Alex. Your first bill, the one that limits the money that goes to the city and goes to the state. If they're, in my small time at the legislative session, or down at the Capitol, that tends to be a general theme amongst what the governor's doing right now, is taking away, I mean, similar to the AEAs, taking away local power and having it go through Des Moines and down there. And so it's been frustrating, but that's just kind of the general theme.
Yeah, on that, I'll just cover the same topics, I guess. So the second one you covered first, the HF 718. Obviously, the flip side of that is every tax dollar is a tax that somebody paid. And so the leadership is obviously responding to the other perception as well, that, you know, if taxes just grow unabated, it quickly becomes a problem also. And we saw that in talking about just some of the changes that have happened over the last year, or the last couple of years, with the reduction in income tax. We've seen that have a huge effect here in Siouxland, with having a pretty good sized state income tax and none in South Dakota. It really caused a lot of value just to leave the whole thing, the city and the state. So you have to consider both sides. There's that tension of taxes and revenue. So anyway, hopefully we can, there's certain areas, maybe cities and counties in the state, that are more problematic. I don't think this side of the state is, and so I think we're probably all pretty united in trying to make sure that whatever policies get put in place that try to put some limits across the state don't penalize here in this area, because I think you guys are doing a good job. And I appreciate you bringing the other bill, and especially it's frustrating just to hear about the marriage penalty. I think that's very flawed. And I think all of those seem like, I mean, I'll have to look at the bill. I haven't seen it, so it's a good reminder to look at it. So thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'll just say real quick, Alex, while I'm not super familiar with that specific bill, I do know that the cliff effect is real. It's, like you said, is something that I've been working on. I do think that we need to focus on that in all aspects of government. We don't want a situation where people are discouraged from trying to make more, improve their situation, improve their life. And the cliff effect in child care was preventing that. I think that this is exactly the same thing. So, you know, I think whatever we can do, we need to look at eliminating those barriers that discourage people from trying to advance in their careers, get wages, improve their situation. So I would be opposed. I would be supportive of that in general terms. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
You good? Okay, go ahead.
And again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. My name is Martin Potabom. I'm the chair of the Municipal Fire and Police Retirement System of Iowa. You guys call us the 411 Board up there on the hill. I keep hearing about the surplus that we have, and I think about my personal budget. If I just quit paying my bills this month, at the end of the month, is that money a surplus? I don't think so. Since 1992, the state committed 3.79% of payroll to go to all city police and fire pensions in 1978. And they paid that every year until 1992. Then they froze the amount and it started dropping off percentage-wise. And then about 2000, I'm gonna guess 5 or 6, we were told, well, it's such a small amount now, we're just gonna quit giving it to you. So since 1992, they have shorted our pension system $203 million. Now, they say it's not shorting us, they just didn't give us what they told us they would. But we see it as a short. And you know, we're 84% funded, which in the world of pensions is actually pretty good. But with $203 million extra would have been better. And the other side of that, and we're talking about the cities, because we have a system where the cities have to keep us whole, and every year we do an actuary, of that $203 million, $171 million belongs to the cities, the 49 cities that make up our system, because they had to make it up. The other 32 million, the system was just shorted. We didn't have the money to invest, to pay out benefits. And we've had bills, I've been on this board now since 1995. We had a bill almost every year until about 5, 6 years ago. And truthfully, we were told by legislators, hey, it's never going anywhere, just cut it out. My problem is, before you have this big surplus, why not pay the bills? And I hear people all the time say, oh, we support our public safety, we support police, we support fire. We're just not going to give you the money we said we would. And I don't think that's right. And I think that last year, what they were supposed to pay would have been 13.3 million. It's not as big a number when you take it year by year until you look at the expense, it's 92. But I would just like people to look at it and know what they've done. And I know a couple of years ago, they did kick in an extra amount for PORS, which is the troopers' pension, and to IPERS, they gave them an additional appropriation to help them, but they didn't give us one. And again, we support police and fire, except with money.
I guess my question is if you're at 84% funded, I mean, I think that's like you said, that's a pretty significant funding. Like IPERS is not at 100% either, right? They're all, I think the state.
They're a little above us.
They're a little above you.
I think they're at 86 now.
So I'm assuming, again, I wasn't part of those discussions, and I've just been in 1 year and a second year, but I'm assuming, and I hate to do that wrongly, but some of that's just based on targeting as well, right? I mean, 84% is probably considered target funding, unless is it driving up costs? You said it's driving up massively larger inputs from the city or other entities?
Well, the cities have to make up the difference.
Okay.
Because the way our system is, the members pay 9.45%, and the cities pay a minimum of 17, or whatever it takes to make us whole. So every year we do an actuary, and this year it's 26.33% of payroll the cities have to pay. So that 171 million that the cities didn't get would have made a big difference in city budgets over those years. The 32 million would have helped us, because we could have invested that and hopefully had more, got a little better funded. Because the legislature gave us a goal, it's been about 6-7 years ago. We were told to set a plan to be 100% funded within 25 years. And we have that, and I think we're in our 4th year of it, and we're on goal to pay off the liabilities that we have in 25 years. But again, that's as long as the markets stay good, because that's what we're all subject to. And one other real quick one before I leave is Senate File 2068. It's to give full law enforcement status to our correctional officers in the prisons. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Robert McFarland, was killed at the state penitentiary. They can't collectively bargain. They're way short-handed on correctional officers, but they're not considered full law enforcement. So that when the Chapter 20 bill was, I say rigged, but some people say just reorganized, they can no longer bargain for anything other than base wage. So working conditions and all those, they can't even talk about. And that bill it's a Senate file, I don't know where it's at, but I would appreciate at least someone looking at that. Those guys, those people in those penitentiaries, I was a cop for 18 years, and I can tell you what, they do dirtier work than we do. And they deserve to be considered law enforcement. Thank you.
Any comments?
Hi, I'm Adele Kinsky, and I'm here about a bill, HF 626, non-medical switching. It was proposed last year, didn't make it through, so I'm hoping this year it will. And this is if you have a medical health condition with your insurance, and the company attempts to remove coverage of your prescription drug in the middle of the year, let's say. To me, it's really unfair because if you have, you have an insurance plan and your doctor prescribes some drug, the medical carrier that you have will just come in and say, no, you can't have it anymore. This is really important to so many people who have lives, they're trying to keep their jobs or they're in school. It's really hard on families not to have this it's almost devastating, really, because it takes years for doctors sometimes to find a drug that's right for you, or it's in conjunction, say, with another drug that you're taking, you have to take this with it. I'm just really hopeful this year it will pass, and we'll have something that is working for our citizens.
I think Jacob's looking it up, but I think we passed it in the House and it didn't go to the Senate. I think that was,
Okay.
because I want to say, I remember this from last year.
Is it up for this year?
It's up for this year.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be up.
So,
Yeah.
And then
Just to say to Jacob's point, if we pass it out of the House, it's still alive, it's still in the Senate, so we could do it again, but it's still alive, it's sitting over there if we passed it out of the House last year.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I can't say for certain that whether it'll pass or not. I don't think it's gonna go through HHS, I'm not really sure. I think it's gonna go through Commerce, but I definitely have been talking to people about it and asking. There is definitely discussion, and I think there's a chance that it's gonna move to the Senate. So I will continue to ask questions and do what I can to bring attention to it and hopefully move forward.
Support it, is that what you're
Yes, yeah, I do support it.
Okay, thank you. I think, Mr. Dees, have any comments on it, or?
Well, since it's already passed out of the House, they're not
That's right.
considering
You
it
won't
right now.
consider it at all.
It'll be up to what the Senate does.
Right.
If it goes back to the House, and they have to work out some kind of compromise, but that would be later in the session. So we'll hope that we'll get updates later in the session, guys. Thanks.
If it passed the House, I would assume that meant at least those three were supportive, and I would be supportive of this as well, so I'd assume it'd be unanimous
Okay,
support.
all right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Not to speak for you guys.
Bob Fritzmeyer, Sioux City. And I'd like your thoughts, please, about Senate File 2082. It's the Medicaid and Children's Health Insurance Program coverage. And would have mental health services provided in schools. And it would implement, flexibilities and requirements for school-based service, especially in small, rural, and underserved schools, to increase access to covered services. I think this would be very important for children. We know that it's important for, especially for the young people, to early on help with any kind of thing that might show up, in their needs for good mental. We all need mental health, good mental health, and so this would apply to children who are enrolled in Medicaid or the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is CHIP, and it would cover, it would have our Health and Human Services Department here in Iowa to cover family, individual, group therapy, prevention, and evaluation services and case management. And also, one aspect of this is it would be coordinated with the United States Department of Health and Human Services, and they would be cooperating with the United States Department of Education. So I'd like your thoughts, please, on, would you, as this bill stands now, will you support it?
And this is House File what?
2082.
2082, I don't know.
House file or Senate file?
Senate.
I'm sorry,
Senate file?
Senate file,
I'm sorry, I misheard you. Senate file, so it would be over on your side, Senator Alon's. Is there anything similar over on the House side?
I don't know, but I do have a question for you. Is this a program that is going to duplicate or override anything that the AEA is already doing with regards to mental health? I've been trying to establish in my own mind, and in visiting with different people, Siouxland Mental Health and others, are we duplicating from one program or one organization to another? So does the AEA provide this kind of thing that you're talking about?
My understanding is that the AEA services are for disability or special needs, special education. This is mental health needs. So So this is unique.
So I'm just glancing at the actual wording of the bill, and I guess on principle, we have become, as a state, kind of going back to my first comments about dependency and with the federal government. Looks like this is a situation where we would be using a lot of federal money and really giving a lot of control over this to the federal government. I would potentially be a little resistant to that part of it. I'm not sure. We continue to appropriate more money to mental health in the state of Iowa. We have done that out of our own budget, and I know there's talk of that increasing, and I've had numerous discussions with different people that are advocating for that, for different components of mental health. So I'm a little bit, myself, a little resistant to just ceding control over so much of our policy to the federal government. So that might be my resistance to this, but I'll have to read the bill more and study exactly what it does. So it's just for more appropriation, if it's already system, or whatever it is. So.
I'll just say that I'm not familiar with the bill, and I know I've heard from a lot of school superintendents and school board members primarily in rural areas that are very hesitant about mandates requiring them to facilitate or provide a lot of these services in which they're not experts. So I don't know exactly how the bill is written, if it's mandating school districts provide these services. They would rather work with independent facilitators, mental health experts that are experts in this area. But that, I think, brings up the bigger issue that there are a lot of services available. We just need to do a better job of connecting the people who need those services, making them aware of those services. And I think the school can play a part as that facilitator. We just need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that works for them and not mandating something on them that is making their job more difficult.
I'd like to, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to get to these other questions.
Okay, I want to make one statement, please, before I go. That my perception is that the people, the teachers, administrators, school people, are spend a lot of time with our children. They're aware of needs of our children, and they need more help. And this would be a wonderful way to deliver services to them that they need, and coordinated with the federal government. I was part of the United States of America.
Thank you.
I just want to add that one of the blessings of being in the Democratic caucus is we have a ton of teachers, and they've brought this to our attention quite a bit. And this is more than just children when it comes to mental health, but Iowa is the worst state in the nation at this point in state psychiatric beds. And so it's more than just children, but we do need to improve our children's mental health as well.
Thanks again, legislators, for being here. Dan Cox, I have the privilege of leading Northwest AEA, lifelong Iowan, about 6 years here in Siouxland. And I want to talk about the AEA reform bill. As was mentioned, none of you were involved in that. We weren't involved in that. None of the public was involved in that creation. And so I've got a question, because the governor had said before the condition of the state address, let's do a comprehensive review. And now her talking point is, no, we did that in 2011 and nothing happened, so we don't need to do it. I want to point out a couple of things. So in 2011, we had divided government, and that's probably why nothing happened, because the two parties couldn't decide, all right, here's the right thing to do with the AEA. So I want to take you back 50 years, 1974. Bob Ray is our popular governor. He's a Republican. Republicans control the House and the Senate, and they recognize that the system for providing special education supports in Iowa is a failure, because it's done at the county level or the joint county level or multi-county. So in essence, it's a superintendent's choose. The urban areas had access and the rural areas did not. And the people of Iowa said, hey, this is not good. Can you please fix this? And the Republicans took care of that. It's 2024, we have a Republican governor, we have strong majorities in the House and the Senate. That's not going to change. So the question is, what would be wrong with having a comprehensive review involving AEA staff, teachers, parents, legislators, DE, and take 6-7 months, because you'll all still be in office next year and you'll be able to pass whatever bill you want. It will be thoughtfully created, rather than the reactionary thing that we got presented to us out of the blue, the 124 pages. So that's the first question, and the follow-up is, if I send you some information that I put together, would that be helpful for you, or do you already have enough if we don't go the comprehensive review route.
More information is better.
Yeah, I'm just sorry,
Okay.
more information is always better.
Okay. Well, I was gonna bring it to the education forum that then got canceled, but I will get it, I'm not trying to get a dig in. Because I will email it and I'll also send it to you at the Capitol, but just think about that. You have the ability for a thoughtful review process. I hope you'll exercise
How
that.
do you all feel about a comprehensive review? Is that something you would be supportive of?
That's been something that's been on the top of the list in discussion already.
Okay.
So, you know, we're with you on that.
All right, thank you.
Well, Senator Bossman already, or Representative Bossman already said, basically the process has been already started, the legislative debate. I mean, it's maybe a little rushed, and now it seems to be, it's becoming a deliberative process, which I think that's potentially where it could end, so.
Okay, I think we have time for one more quick question.
Yeah, I'll
So
just
go
say,
ahead.
well, I'll just say, since you agree that a comprehensive review is needed, you would not support the bill then. That would seem logical to me.
My name is Beth. I just wanted to say one thing. Representative Scholten referenced this. I would love for each of you to share how many emails you've gotten in favor of this bill versus against. But the other thing is, I waited because I wanted to ask and be respectful of those of you who are not here for education. So I wanted to make sure you got your questions answered first, because our educational forum was unfortunately canceled at 8:30. So I hope to ask these questions there. But currently, AEAs are organizing staffing and services at district requests based on district needs. Multiple factors go into that: IEPs, individualized education programs for special education students, all of those things. If this passes, not having seen the amendment that was referenced yet, districts would have to take on more of that burden of the organization, that data review, that figuring out where the services are going to come from, who's going to provide that, evaluating the ebb and flow of special education in their district. The administrators I've talked to says this is a big concern for them. They don't have the ability to take on more, even if you give them more funding for that. They can't add to their plate. It's maxed. So I guess the other thing that we do is we provide that oversight to make sure we're following educational law. One thing that's not addressed in this bill is who oversees those private organizations who then come in providing educational services in a setting where they don't have background or education on educational law. Is that going to also fall on districts, because there's another burden to districts? And if not, is that going to fall on the Department of Education? And if so, what is that oversight going to look like? Because our oversight has apparently been inefficient or not acceptable. So we want to ensure that educational law is followed in Iowa schools.
I want to comment, first of all, real quick to Mr. Cox. There's no reason why this can't be done in a different way, and I agree with that 100%. Number two, I want to remind everybody, contrary to what you may have heard or what you believe, Republicans are not a rubber stamp for the governor. We do have a brain, we sit and talk, we get angry, we do all those kinds of things. So don't think don't lose sight of that. I also want to, with regards to your comments, we got a long ways to go on this. A long ways to go. It's not going to happen that quick. I want to also comment about JD's thought with regards to he didn't know anything about it. I did not know anything about it. None of us knew anything about it until it showed up. So he's not alone in that. He likes to consider himself to be the Lone Ranger. So I just want to share this one last thing. That's all I got is 30 seconds.
I want to read from the overview that was sent to me yesterday, and I'll just read this verbatim. It's exactly what it says. Schools, talking about school districts, will drive the timeline, and nothing has to change. That's what's in this. That's what's in the amendment right now. So, your points are really good, Dan. You know, we've been pushing for that too, and I think in some form that's probably going to happen. In fact, I met the other day with 3 of your colleagues, and we were talking about that. So, yeah, I think there's not you know, it's very difficult, of course, when there's not a lot of information out there, not to have some kind of panic, but there is, from my perspective, and I think from all of our perspectives, not a reason to panic right now.
All right. I think we're out of time. Okay.
I'll be back next month.
Great. I look forward to seeing you here. Actually, I have to say, I won't be here next month because I have to take kids to a speech tournament. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for answering our questions. Thank you for the work you do for us in Des Moines. We appreciate your participation. Thank you also to Siouxland Cares and the Mayor's Youth Commission for being here. You guys did a great job today. Thank you very much. And a final thank you to the Sioux City Museum who hosts us we appreciate your being here. We appreciate your educating yourselves about the issues of the day. Remember to vote. It is your precious gift, and you need to use it.